Hey there everybody, it's Matt here from Electronics Warehouse. I'm here to give you a quick little tutorial of how to solder. Things you'll need: soldering iron or station, which I have here. I just so happen to have a combination soldering stand and helping hands. Important part I'm trying to mention is the helping hands, very convenient to have. Wet paper towel or sponge so you can clean off your tip and get the excess solder off there. It's never a good idea to have a glob of solder, or if you've got a lot of black or brown resin on there, you're going to want to clean that flux off. We'll wipe that off and we're good to go. Obviously you're going to need some solder. We've got a thicker solder here and a thinner diameter solder here. Basically, the thicker wire you're doing, you might want some thicker solder. The thinner wire you're doing, use the thinner stuff. So we're using thin enough wire, I can use the thin stuff. So what I'm going to do here is lock and load these into my helping hands, and then I'll briefly give you an explanation of soldering concept. Alright, so the concept of soldering is to heat up the wire or object you're soldering hot enough to melt the solder on its own. A lot of people think you just take the solder, glob it onto the iron, and start painting along. Well, it doesn't really work that way. Solder didn't really stick, just kind of wipes off. So I like the sandwich method. So you take your iron, put it on one side, take your solder, have it on another side, and you put your wire in the middle. Now, I take my iron and touch it to the wire, and immediately where the wire touches the iron, I start off there and pull the solder away. And you see it starts heating up the wire itself, and the solder goes into the wire. I pull my iron across, kind of spread it around, and I'm good. Now this is what we would call a tinned wire, meaning it has been soldered and is now solid and one solid piece. You can even hear it. Compared to this one is a untinned wire, and you can see it starts fraying. So I'm going to put this back together, and I'm going to tin this wire. So the proper way to put two wires together is to tin them both. So now I'm going to do the sandwich method on here, start at the apex and work my way out. And as you can see, the solder starts flowing into the wire easily. And I'm going to wipe that across. Now, because I am going to be putting these together, the solder soaked into here kind of like a sponge. I want a little extra solder soaked into here so when I put them together they can glue themselves together or solder together. So I'm going to put a little excess here so you can see it's going to start to kind of bubble up here and look like it's got an excess amount of solder, and that's what we want. Now I'm going to take this out of the helping hands here. I want to heat up this guy and touch my other wire to it, and when this solder touches that solder, the hot solder is going to transfer its heat to the cold solder and instantly heat it up quick. They're going to melt together and boom, a solder joint. And as you can see, it's melting together. I'm going to give it one swipe across the top, and we're good. I'll give a little more there. There we go. And let go. A little blow down there. And as you can see, we've got one nice solid soldered piece of wire. Now, if you were doing this in a non-motive application, you would want to have a piece of heat shrink inserted over one half of the wire before you solder them together, which I did not do here. Luckily, this is a demonstration, so I can just slide it over here. You would cover it up. Ideally, you want this in the middle, and then you would shrink it down, and you've just soldered two wires together and made a professional joint. Now, I don't know if you saw the smoke coming up from the solder while I was doing that. Those fumes are not healthy to breathe. You do not want to breathe those. If you're soldering indoors, it's a good idea to have an extraction fan. If not, take it outside or solder near a window. Thank you very much, everybody. Have a good one. Solder safe.